Hi, everybody. Welcome to the fourth or the third. I think this is the fourth episode of EOM Coach Conversations. And today I'm here with Lena Lee from the Heartful Mama. And I think the topic that we are talking about today is so close to both of our hearts. And it's something that we feel like is the most, it's kind of like a buzzword, but then it's also the most neglected practice. It gets talked about more than it is actually practiced. And we're talking about self-care. And we're going to be covering a lot of things today. We have, I think this session is going to be very valuable for all moms, dads, caregivers who find themselves in the thick of things, who find themselves always putting others first and themselves later, who find themselves making excuses for not practicing self-care, for coming up with, I don't have enough time, but I need to do this. I have so much on my plate. And then we're also going to be talking about something like what self-care is, what self-care isn't. Lena's going to be busting a lot of myths today. And before I move on, I'll introduce Lena. So Lena is originally from Singapore, but now in the US. She's a certified conscious parenting coach, and she has one son who's 2 years old. So she has her hands full with him because she doesn't have family around, and she knows why self-care is important. And I am Sidrat Asim from Elasticity of Momming, and you're probably seeing me live on Mindful Mamas Pakistan. Wherever you're from, come, please say hi. It's 11 p.m. in my part of the world and 10 p.m. in Nina's part of the world. And we are both, we both are of the opinion that no matter where you're from, what culture you belong to, self-care is something that most parents, especially moms of Asian heritage, really struggle with. So say hi in the chat box. Let me know that you're watching. Tell me what's your excuse for not practicing self-care. And I'll start with Lena. Lena, when did you realize self-care was important for you?
First of all, hi everyone. So happy to be here. Hi Sidrat, thanks for having me. So when did so it's actually 10 a.m. here, not 10 p.m. Just wanted to correct that.
All right, yeah.
When did I realize? So for me, as Sidrat has sort of introduced my story, I live in the US. I don't have family support. It's just me, my husband, and my boy. And I think in the first year when I became a mom was when I realized self-care was so important. Mainly because, as a new mom, it was a lot to go through. I don't know, like like new moms, we're figuring it out, right, as you go along. And oftentimes I would feel overwhelmed. I'm just like overwhelmed all the time because, I told my husband there's this thing that mothers usually, I wouldn't say all, but I would be confident as to go a good 95%, that mothers carry the mental load of the family. We're always thinking what to do next. What's the next thing I need to do after the kid goes to sleep? What is the groceries I need to buy? What are the stuff I need to do, like to clean the house, take care of the kid, wash the clothes, like every work. And you at work in, there's like a million things on our mind, and our mind never stops. It just never stops. And then for me, it kind of got to a point where I would feel very stretched and I'll feel really stressed. And then I've noticed that when I feel stressed and really stretched, I get super, super, super cranky. And then I would take it out on my husband. I would like take it out on even my son, because I don't know how to manage myself, because I haven't got, I don't have enough rest. I'm not eating well because I was trying to breastfeed. So I was just like eating whatever I could find.
Hmm.
And it just was not sustainable. So for me at that point, I realized self-care, quite honestly, it is not about being selfish, because that was something I really needed to reframe in my mind. Because coming from Asian culture, especially for me, growing up in Singapore, I have a lot of mothers in my family. I grew up with a lot of mothers, and I've always seen how sacrificial they become. They always give so much to their kids, to their home. They have a full-time job, but still after work, come home, cook dinner, feed the kids, work with the homework. Like, it's not that the fathers don't do anything, it's just
Hmm.
like the mothers tend to do more. And
Hmm.
so for me, coming from that background, it was really hard for me to get around self-care. I always think, oh, self-care, such a non-Asian thing. It is No, it is unheard of. And then I had to talk to a friend. She's a really dear friend of mine. She's a therapist, and she kind of educated me on the idea that self-care, it's not selfish. It's about really taking care of who you are and nourishing yourself, so then you become the I guess that so that you become refreshed. Number one, refreshed, and
Hmm.
that you are rested, and that your soul is nourished, so that you can be energetic and you can really give to not just yourself, but also to your loved ones, especially family, because they live with you.
Hmm.
So that's when I realized self-care is like super important. That was like a long story, but yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. No, that was such a valuable story because there's so much that you learn from it. One, you're saying that you used to get super cranky when you weren't looking after yourself, and it used to come out on your husband and your kid. And that is so important because as coaches, this is what we really try to educate our clients about, educate other parents about, that you can read up on conscious parenting as much as you can. You can have all the tips and strategies and the scripts for dealing with situations when they come up with your children, especially like when they're having a hard time. But unless you are well rested, unless you are taking care of yourself, unless your reserves are not full, you are not going to have access to that information. And what's going to come out of your mouth at that time is going to be the same autopilot stuff that's always been happening. So this is why self-care is so important, because unless you're looking after yourself, you're still in that autopilot mode. You're still like, that's when you start wondering, oh, why did I say that? That's something my mom used to say. How many of you people resonate with that? how,
Yes.
how many people have opened their mouths and screamed at their kids and then thought, where did that come from? So,
Yeah.
this is why self-care is so important. And
Yes.
then you talk about, how it's a cultural thing, and I completely relate with that because it's the same in subcontinent, in the India, Pakistan. I think it's predominantly an Asian thing, but then I've also noticed with clients from all over the world that it is a global phenomena, that women
Hmm.
do tend to put themselves last. They're constantly meeting the needs of others, and they end up with not meeting their own needs, and that's when they reach burnout. That's when they start feeling resentments towards their loved ones. So you make two very important points about why self-care is important in this very nice story of yours. And with that, I'm going to come to the next point about so what is self-care? We keep hearing this, it's a buzzword now, everybody's talking about it, but how do you practice it?
So the way I see self-care, like you've said, self-care is a buzzword that Instagram is using, Facebook is using so much. Google self-care,
Mm-hmm.
you'll see like thousands of searches on what self-care is. And to me, self-care, it's not about spa session or
Mm-hmm.
an hour-long yoga session, although those would be so good, but it's not that, right? It's not about going to Sephora and buying the latest makeup accessories or getting the latest winter clothes from, I don't know, Banana Republic or something. Those are great stuff, and I wouldn't consider them necessarily as self-care. If I can filter it down to what self-care is, I would say self-care is really about honoring and caring for who you are right now, not about what you should be, not about the kind of person that you want to be. That's self-help, that's something else. Self-care is about honoring and nourishing the person that you are right now. So it doesn't have to be a very idealistic picture of what you think self-care is. And I think that's something that we really should and must redefine in parenthood, because mothers, we don't have a lot of time. There's just a million things going on every day. And then we always say we don't have self-care. But then self-care can be as little as like 2 minutes or even 5 minutes. But it's all about, like you mentioned earlier in the session, it's all about what you think, like the reframe that you have around it. When you think of self-care, what do you think of? And if you're alive, I love to hear I can't see what you're writing, but I would love to hear and read later on what self-care is to you. And what is it that people do in their self-care every day? Like for me, I will give you a very good example. So every morning I have an electric toothbrush, and it's a 2-minute toothbrush thing, right? So for me, self-care is as simple as that 2 minutes. When I'm brushing my teeth, I don't think of anything else. I just think of how the toothbrush head feels on my teeth, how it goes from the top and the bottom and then inside. I just spend 2 minutes. I'm doing the same thing every day, but the difference is, am I doing it mindlessly? Keep think, and then while I'm doing it, I think about what am I going to do after my morning routine. Am I going to make breakfast? What am I making for breakfast today? Like a gazillion things in my mind. Or do I just spend that 2 minutes focusing on my present moment of just brushing my teeth and feeling it on my gums and teeth? And to me that's self-care right there, where I don't get into the I need to do this for the day. And so that's what I did this morning. It kind of resets me and grounds me a little bit, so then I could get on my day feeling a little more refreshed. So yes, that's what I would think about when I think about self-care. It's about nourishing and caring for you right now. Yes.
Yeah, I love that example. That's such a practical example for moms to just incorporate into their daily lives, because they're always on the run. They have such a huge to-do list, one after the other. And, after outside the bathroom, I'm sure there's a kid knocking and somebody's there like, mama, mama. So this is like such a great example of how to pause. I'm going to share another example. And this also is, it's based in mindfulness, and it's just taking 2 minutes to breathe, and a simple exercise. And I invite everybody who's watching to do this with me right now, because it is so helpful. It does two things. One, it gives you that pause, and two, you start noticing where you're at right now. So regardless of whether you're sitting or lying down, if you have your headphones plugged in or whatever, just close your eyes with me right here and do a 5-minute inhale, hold it for 5 minutes, and then exhale out for 5 seconds. 5-second inhale, 5 seconds hold, and 5-second exhale. So and another time. And this time when you do this again with me, just start noticing the parts of your body that are all tensed up, that have some sort of pain, and just invite those parts of your body to relax and release all the tension that you're holding. And so usually when I just take out 2 minutes to do this, I notice that my jaws are all clenched up, my shoulders are tensed, I'm carrying some weight in my back, and I'm able to release it with the breath out. So the next time when you do this practice, and invite anybody who's watching to again make this a part of their morning ritual or sleeping ritual, or any time in the day that they can get like just 2 minutes to themselves while you're cooking in the kitchen, while you're preparing breakfast for the family. Just take that 2 minutes to breathe and inhale calm, and exhale all the stress, and you'll feel so much better. And also that point about the reframe that you're making about how we say that we just don't have the time for self-care. And these are subconscious messages that we're constantly telling ourselves. We're constantly telling ourselves that we just don't have the time, we have so much to do. And what you're really saying is that you just don't matter to yourself, because when something matters to you, you make time for it. So it really comes to a mindset game, and mindset can be shifted with language. So anybody who says that I just don't have the time, um, I invite you to stop saying that, and reframe that as, so let's suppose you've been thinking of going to the gym, and now you're saying I just don't have the time to go to the gym. uh, Rephrase that as, going to the gym is important to me. What can I change about my routine? What are the 3 things I can change about my day or my schedule which would allow me to go to the gym? So when you do that, you stop telling yourself, and you stop sending that message to your subconscious that you're not important to yourself, that you don't matter. And that perspective will start changing, because the mothers I talk to, the clients we have, they cannot imagine a different reality. That is how much they've programmed themselves to believe that their needs just don't matter, and which is why this is so important. um, do you have any other practices that you would talk about and tell people about?
So, Sidra, I just wanted to add one point that you just shared, and I think
Mm.
it just came to my mind, and I thought that's such a beautiful point of how it's also about our children. Like when we believe in that belief that we don't matter, our children see that. So what they've learned, because we all learn that children learn by modeling, they learn from us because we are the primary caregivers. So when they see us giving so much of ourselves and putting ourselves last, that's what they believe too, because they model that
Mm.
behavior. And so, like for me, as an example, once again, like I see how the mothers in my family are always giving. And so I think that's the way mothers should be doing. And then I end up modeling that behavior, even though I'm a grown woman. I still have that belief in my mind because that's something that I have seen in my family when I was a little girl. And so, to mothers out there, or even fathers, I kind of want to just invite you to just kind of think about this. When you put yourself last and your children sees that, when your children grow up to become adults and having their own lives, is that the message you want them to have? That their needs are not important, that they should always put themselves last once they have children. Is that the message you want to give them? For me, and for you as well, Sidra, I'm sure it's a very clear no. We want our children to grow up to know where their needs are, how to ask for help, and to be, healthy and resilient children without feeling that they have to keep giving and giving and giving and giving and giving all the time. There has to be, like a give and take. So I thought that was a beautiful point that you pointed out, and I just wanted to add to that. Yeah.
And from what you just said, um, we want our children to know that they can ask for help, and that is
Yes.
so important. Sometimes we ignore, or we don't realize that even asking for help is self-care.
Mm-hmm.
Setting boundaries is self-care.
Mm-hmm.
Saying no is self-care, because when you're saying no to others, you're saying yes to yourself. um, so there's that. I
So
also,
your
yeah.
no, go ahead. So your next
Go
question
ahead.
was like, so your next question was like, any other points on self-care practice? So I had a little list, and I'm going to share a little bit about that. We've covered a little bit during our conversation, which was about setting boundaries, right? Like saying no to others. I had a hard time doing it because I'm a big people pleaser, and it took me, a lot of practice to say no. You know how when you say no to others, it's not that you don't love them, it's just that I need to say yes to myself first. And I tend to, I don't know about you, but I have a hard time saying no to people. I always want to try to help people and do whatever I can and take on way too much. And then I burn out, and then I get overwhelmed, and then I become a version of me that I don't like to see. So there was when I realized, oh no, I need to learn to say no. So setting boundaries for yourself by saying no. And number two is to have supportive relationships. So what does that look like? It could be, it's pandemic times. Like for me and my family, we have not been seeing friends because of the pandemic. And the US, the numbers are quite high. So how do you maintain your supportive relationships without in-person meetings? So for us, or at least for me, is we have Zoom calls. I have a group of really close-minded, no, not close-minded, like-minded, close-minded, like-minded friends that I see every week, and we'll talk and connect and share. We do FaceTime. I mean, my family's in Singapore. So technology is a great tool to still maintain supportive relationships, even though you still have social distancing. Like social distancing doesn't mean you cut off all your friendships and you cut off all your, that's not that. We can use technology and really bond those supportive relationships. So that's two, because we all need connections to thrive. And the third thing I had, which was what we've talked about a little bit, is about asking for help. Like if you need help, whether it's mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, even if it's just like talking to like your husband and say, hey, I'm really tired. I'm not operating. I'm so tired. I need like a 15-minute nap. You're asking for help for just 15 minutes for me just to get some closed eyes, so then I can wake up after that feeling a little more refreshed. And then when I'm refreshed, I can help out more. And the two questions that I really want to ask for everybody who's listening in or on the replay later is two things. Number one, because self-care looks different for everybody. Like for me, mindful practice is wonderful for me, but it might not work. Somebody might just doze off during a mindful exercise. So for me, my two questions to everyone watching this is, number one, what brings you joy? Like in your everyday, like little things, what brings you joy? It could be, if Netflix is something that brings you joy, that's your self-care right there. If drinking coffee brings you joy, that's that right there. It can be anything. If doodling or drawing brings you joy, that's there. So what brings you joy? What nourishes your soul, I guess. What nourishes your heart? What nourishes the soul? Okay, so that's question one. And number two, how do you reset? When you're overwhelmed, how do you press it? What's your way of resetting for yourself? Like whether, if you say, for example, if you get into an argument with a family or you've got way too much going on, how do you, when and how do you just press that button and just reset, let it go, start all over? Because that's motherhood, right? As parenthood, every day is different. We reset every day, but I also want to invite you to kind of reset throughout the day. So another practice that a wonderful coach and friend of mine actually shared with me is, in between her day, during transitions, like for example, going to the grocery store, coming back, attending to her children, and then cooking dinner. In between all those transitions, she does like a 2 to 3 minutes reset, where she just do like the deep breathing that you shared with us earlier on, just to kind of ground herself and then kind of regroup herself before she goes into the next activity. It's kind of like when you think about raising toddlers, like between dinner time, playtime, TV time, there's always that little transition. Like, what is that transition? How do you get your kid to transit from, okay, we're gonna do like coloring, and then, okay, let's transit to dinner. What does that transition look like? So for us as mothers, it's the same thing. What does that transition look like? Is it drinking a glass of cold water? Is it doing a deep breathing exercise for 30 seconds? So that was another practice that I thought was beautiful. And I thought that's quite, practical also. Because 30 seconds, when you think about it, it's really not a lot of time.
Exactly.
But it's about integrating self-care into your everyday. So then it kind of keeps you going. It's like that little fuel that you need. And of course, if you do have the luxury for like a spa session, that's even wonderful, but we don't have that every day, right? So then how do we integrate that so that we are always keeping our cup full as opposed to like just surviving? Because I think it's not, to me, honestly, and I think for you too, it's not realistic to survive motherhood, because motherhood is like a lifelong journey. You can't survive in your entire life. So self-care is one, to me, it's so close to my heart, because self-care is how we can actually really move from surviving to thriving. And we want to thrive, we want to enjoy our children. But if we don't know how to get out of that overwhelm, we cannot enjoy our children. We're always just internally just always fighting within ourselves, and then we can give our best self to our kids and to our family. So
true.
Yeah, that's kind of the two questions I wanted to share. Yes.
And on that note, I'm just gonna wrap it up. But I love that point about the transitions, and I also want to just add that those transitions could look different every day. There are days when I need to breathe as a transition, and there are days where I would do 5 jumping jacks moving from one activity to another. So always check in with yourself. What is it that your mind, body, soul is asking you of, and do that. Usually that comes from listening to your inner voice, and to have access to that inner voice, you need to do it as a practice every day. And we say this from a place of complete non-judgment and shame as well. Sometimes I feel like there's so much chatter about self care going on that some mothers are starting to feel like a little bit of shame around we're not taking care of ourselves. um, I read this article a few days ago which talked about basic hygiene should not be self-care, and I don't agree with that. Every person, every mom, every caretaker is at a different stage in their lives where a different form of self-care is going to work for them. Some days I really need that day at the spa where I am away from all of the chaos. But some days when you don't have access to that, I can't beat myself about it and say that just because I'm not getting that, I'm going to have a cranky day. um, we should always try to come up with some creative solutions where we can make it work given our circumstances. Not everybody has the luxury to go shopping at Sephora. Not everybody has help around them. They can't ask for help. Sometimes people who are living away from family and friends, they can't ask somebody to step in so that they could take some time off. But whatever works for you in that moment, take that. And this is the message that we are going to leave you with. Lena, where can people find you?
So you can find me on Facebook as the Heartful Mama, or Instagram, the Heartful Mama Coach. And I also have a website called theheartfulmama.com. You can connect with me, message me, whatever. I love to connect with people who are on the same page. So yeah.
And I can be found at Elasticity of Momming. And if anybody out there listening to us is struggling with self-care, is struggling with the mindset around self-care, are not able to give to themselves, please get in touch and we would love to help you. Bye.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Bye.
take care.